She was lost in the city until she broke down in the back seat of the wrong car. He was a man who had everything except someone to come home to. When Ava Sinclair mistakenly collapses in the back seat of a luxury sedan, she expects anger, or worse. Instead, she finds quiet understanding in the form of Damien Holt, a guarded millionaire CEO with grief buried beneath his tailored armor. What begins as a chance encounter becomes an undeniable connection. As Ava claws her way back from rock bottom with a second chance at her dream career, Damien finds himself drawn to her light in ways that threaten to shatter the walls he's built for years. But in a world where power whispers louder than promises, can two hearts from such different worlds truly meet in the middle? Unexpected kindness, the power of vulnerability, and love that dares to take the front seat, even when life tries to keep it hidden. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love hearing from you. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt romance, one life at a time. Rain lashed the sidewalk like it held a personal grudge. Ava Sinclair's shoes squelched with every step, soaked through and clinging like regret. Her tote bag sagged heavily from her shoulder, weighed down with a laptop she couldn't afford to replace and a folder of mock-ups that had taken all night to polish, only to be dismissed in under 5 minutes by a recruiter who hadn't even looked her in the eye. She was tired, bone-deep tired. The kind of tired that didn't just settle into your muscles, it wrapped around your hope and squeezed. A line of sleek black cars lined the curb outside the business plaza. One of them, a matte black town car with tinted windows, looked vaguely familiar. Her brain, foggy with exhaustion and disappointment, whispered that it was probably the one Raya had arranged for her second meeting last week. Maybe the driver was back early. She didn't think. Not really. She just opened the back door, slid in, and closed it behind her. Then Ava burst into tears. Not the gentle, cinematic kind. These tears were loud, raw, ugly. The kind you couldn't hold in anymore. Not after weeks of rejection letters, of we'll be in touch, of counting loose change for groceries, of watching her dreams slip further away every morning she woke up still jobless. She pressed her palms to her face, sobbing into them. "I'm sorry," she gasped through broken breaths. Just 5 minutes. Please." A beat of silence passed. Then a calm male voice said, "Would you like a tissue?" Ava froze. Her fingers slid from her face. Slowly, like peeling off a mask, she turned her head. This wasn't a driver. This wasn't even a chauffeur. This was a man in a crisp, tailored charcoal suit. A man who looked carved from storm clouds and restraint, with dark eyes and a jawline like a sculptor's study in tension. He held out a folded linen handkerchief, pristine and absurdly soft-looking, as if he'd never once had cause to actually use it. "Oh my God," she whispered. "You're not thought. You thought this was your car," he finished, voice even. Clearly. She wanted the seat to swallow her whole. I'm so sorry," she stammered, scrambling upright, her bag bumping against the door as she tried to find the handle with trembling fingers. I wasn't trying to. You looked like you needed somewhere to fall apart." His voice was quieter now. Not kind exactly, but not unkind either. "I figured I could spare 5 minutes." Ava stared at him. For one dizzy moment, the silence became a strange sort of cocoon. The city raged outside. The rain, the horns, the weight of her collapsing plans. But inside the car, everything held still. She blinked back another wave of tears and wiped at her cheeks with her sleeve. "I'm not usually like this. Neither am I." That drew a reluctant, breathy laugh from her. She pressed her back into the seat and closed her eyes for a second, trying to breathe like a normal human being again. Then, "I should go." "You can stay." His tone was unreadable. "Unless you're afraid, I'll call the police." That startled her. She looked at him, really looked at him this time. The man didn't just wear money, he wore control. Everything about him was deliberate. The watch that gleamed subtly at his wrist, the way his coat fell neatly beside him on the seat, the loosened tie that still looked purposeful. He didn't fidget. He didn't fill silences. He didn't need to. "I didn't mean to intrude," Ava said quietly. "You did," he replied. Then, with a subtle shift of his shoulders, "But I haven't asked you to leave." The rain blurred the outside world, making the interior of the car feel oddly suspended. As if this wasn't a mistake, but some kind of pause, a moment carved out from chaos. Rough day? He asked, eyes flicking to her reflection in the glass. Ava let out a dry sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Define rough. He didn't smile, but something in his expression softened. Start with your name. She hesitated, but something in the tone of his voice, not demanding, just certain, made her want to answer. Ava. Ava Sinclair. He nodded, and then after a beat, offered his hand. Damien Holt. The name knocked something loose in her brain. Damien Holt. That name belonged to headlines, tech columns, billionaire watch lists. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're the Damien Holt? He shrugged, like that meant less to him than it did to her. I am, and now I'm the man you've cried on in the back of a stolen car. Her lips parted, horrified, and then she laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in what felt like months. She clutched her chest, breathless, as the tension cracked and shattered around her. I swear, she said, grinning through damp lashes, this isn't even the worst thing that's happened to me today. Damien watched her with something close to curiosity. Then I'll consider myself honored. She shook her head, still in disbelief. God, you must think I'm completely unhinged. No, he said simply. I think you're overwhelmed. And that somehow broke her all over again. Not into tears this time, but into silence. Grateful, aching silence. She turned toward the door, hand resting on the handle. Thank you for not kicking me out. Miss Sinclair. She paused, glancing back. Damien reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a simple business card. He held it between two fingers, like offering it without pressure. If you ever need a contact or something better than 5 minutes of quiet. Ava took it with slow hands. The card was minimalist. Just a name, a number. Holt International embossed in subtle silver foil. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied. But for what it's worth, I hope your day gets better. She stepped out of the car and into the rain. This time, it felt different. Cleansing, almost. As the door clicked shut behind her, Ava glanced down at the card in her hand, her reflection staring back from the slick surface of the curb. Damien Holt. What on earth just happened? Ava didn't go home. Not right away. Instead, she walked the city in the rain, Damien Holt's card clutched tightly in her hand, like it might disintegrate if she let it go. Her thoughts whirled as chaotically as the storm above, confused, raw, and unexpectedly light. She didn't know what had happened in that car, only that it felt like something had shifted, something small but undeniable. She had entered as one version of herself, frayed, invisible, and exited feeling seen. Not fixed, not safe, but noticed. And that somehow mattered. By the time she reached her apartment, the rain had eased to a mist, as though even the sky had exhausted itself. Her clothes were damp, hair matted to her forehead. The stairwell to her third-floor walk-up smelled like old laundry and too many broken dreams. But she didn't mind it tonight. Not as much. She toed off her shoes and dropped her bag by the door. The silence inside was deafening, the kind that made you feel both free and desperately alone. Her fridge hummed like a tired friend. One flick of the light switch revealed the same peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture that had greeted her every night since she moved in, but it didn't sting tonight. Not quite the same way. She pulled off her jacket, sank to the floor, and sat cross-legged on the worn rug. The business card lay beside her, taunting and quiet. Damien Holt she'd on a billionaire's lap. Basically. The flush of embarrassment hit late, but it hit hard. She groaned into her hands, mortified. He probably thought she was some kind of lost cause, or worse, a charity case. The kind of woman men like him offered business cards to as a gesture of pity. But that didn't feel right. There had been no condescension in his eyes, no polished sympathy, no empty pleasantries. Just observation. Stillness. As if he was cataloging her breakdown not with judgment, but with curiosity. Like she was a puzzle he hadn't solved yet, and he hadn't dismissed her. He could have. Should have. But he hadn't. Her phone buzzed. Check in when you can, and don't forget, you're better than how today felt. Ava stared at the message for a long second. She hadn't told Raya about the interview, or the car, or the rain. She hadn't told anyone anything, but somehow, Raya always knew. She typed a quick reply. Rough day. But I'm okay. Thanks for checking in. Then, on impulse, do you know a guy named Damien Holt? The reply came almost immediately. That's a loaded question. As in, Damien Holt, the CEO who could buy a continent? Ava exhaled. So it wasn't just her imagination. He really was that Damien Holt. Yeah, that one. Why? Did you run into him? She stared at the text for a long time before responding. Kind of. I accidentally got into his car. Thought it was a rideshare. Ended up sobbing like a lunatic. What? He didn't throw me out, gave me a tissue and his business card. There was a pause. Then that sounds exactly like something he would do. Quietly weird. Ridiculously intense. You okay? I think so. Just confused. Whatever it was, it's probably not the weirdest thing he's seen this week. That made her laugh, which, for the first time all day, felt real and deserved. She set the phone aside, stretched out on the rug, and stared at the ceiling. The paint was cracked. The corners of the room sagged with fatigue. Still, something inside her had lifted. Just enough to breathe. Tomorrow, she'd open her laptop and prep for her next pitch. She'd fix the mock-ups that had been dismissed today. She'd email the agencies she'd been too scared to cold pitch before. But tonight, she allowed herself to exist in the strange in-between. Not broken, not thriving, just floating. Maybe that was enough. Across town, Damien Holt sat alone in the back of the same car, its leather interior still faintly carrying the scent of rain and something citrus. Her perfume, maybe? He stared at the city through the window. It blurred, golden and wet. His fingers curled loosely around the steering app on his phone, though he hadn't given the driver a destination. He was supposed to be on his way to a meeting. Something about capital realignment and acquisition strategy. Elijah had pinged him twice already, but he hadn't moved. She had been so human, so vividly, unpolished. And yet, she hadn't begged, hadn't simpered, hadn't asked for anything. She had cried, apologized, and left. Damien couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him and not seen either power or threat. But Ava Sinclair? She'd looked at him like a human being. A slightly awkward one, yes, but not unreachable. It lingered with him in a way that unsettled, and he couldn't decide if he liked that or not. The next morning, the city was washed clean. Ava woke with a strange, unexpected energy. She brewed a cup of instant coffee, pulled out her laptop, and reworked her portfolio presentation. She added bolder typography, cleaner transitions, a flashier intro. When she finally hit save, she caught her reflection in the screen. The girl staring back looked like someone who might just make it. She glanced at the business card still resting on the corner of her desk. Then, carefully, she tucked it into her wallet, not as a promise, but as a reminder. Sometimes even the most unexpected moments could shift everything. And this felt like a beginning. The bus rattled its way down 38th Street, its tires hissing on wet asphalt. Ava clutched her portfolio bag with one hand and steadied herself with the other, her fingers gripping the cold metal pole. She had dressed carefully. Pressed trousers, the one blazer that didn't look like it had survived 3 apartments in a decade, and a simple blouse that told the world she tried, even if her bank account didn't believe it. The remnants of her encounter with Damien Holt hovered in her mind like a strange dream. He hadn't contacted her. Not that she expected him to. It had been one of those weird, too human moments that didn't lead to anything, a glitch in reality, a ripple in an otherwise forgettable day. Still, the card in her wallet had weight, not monetary weight, psychological, a talisman of the impossible. She tried not to think about it. Instead, she repeated Raya's advice in her head like a prayer. Show up 10 minutes early. Smile, even if you're terrified. Let your work speak first, then your heart. She arrived at Keenan Beck 15 minutes early. The building was all clean lines and soft glass, nestled on a modest corner downtown. Not ostentatious, but undeniably creative, a kind of quiet brilliance. The kind of place she could belong to if she played everything right. Inside, the lobby was warm, full of color and energy. Posters from past campaigns lined the walls, bright reds, bold fonts, real brands, real success. She signed in, gave her name, Ava Sinclair, and was directed to a small waiting area. Her fingers tapped nervously on her laptop case. 2 other applicants sat across from her, both better dressed, both already deep in glossy portfolio magazines. Her stomach flipped. You're here. You made it. That's already something. At precisely 2 p.m., the door swung open, and a woman with sleeve tattoos, a confident stride, and a smile that reached her eyes appeared. Ava? She asked. Voice crisp. Ava stood, smoothing her blouse with hands that suddenly felt sweaty. "Yes, that's me. I'm Naomi," the woman said. "Senior designer. Come on back." The hallway they walked through was bright and buzzing with energy. Shared workspaces, sketches taped to glass, mugs of half-drunk coffee. It wasn't sleek. It was alive. "We're a little chaotic," Naomi offered, glancing back with a grin. "But it works." "I like chaotic," Ava said quietly. Naomi raised an eyebrow and led her into a glass-walled conference room. "Good. You'll need to." Ava set up her laptop with steady hands, or at least, they looked steady. Her heart wasn't. But once the screen lit up and her first slide clicked into place, something clicked in her too. She began with a local cafe rebrand, warm tones, custom icons, packaging concepts, then a nonprofit redesign, clean lines, inclusive language, impact-driven messaging. Finally, a brand kit for a children's bookstore, playful yet polished, with illustrations she'd done herself in the sleepless hours between temp gigs. Naomi leaned forward as the slides moved. She didn't fidget, didn't interrupt, just nodded, scribbled a few notes, and occasionally cracked a smile. When Ava finished, she closed the laptop gently. "That's it." There was a pause. Ava's nerves prickled. Then Naomi leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen on the table. "I'm going to be honest, that was better than I expected." Ava blinked. "Oh, thank you?" "We don't have a full-time position open right now," Naomi continued, voice neutral, "but we do bring in freelancers regularly. If you're open to a trial project, we could use someone like you on a small brand refresh we've got coming up." Ava straightened. "Yes, absolutely." Another voice entered from the doorway, smooth, commanding. "That's what I like to hear." A man in a tailored gray jacket stepped inside, Clarence Liu, creative director. His name had been on every Keenan Beck article Ava had ever read. He didn't offer a handshake, just a nod. "Naomi will send you the brief. It's for a local startup in need of a visual revamp. Clean lines, strong narrative. You'll collaborate with one of our junior copywriters. We'll negotiate pay and hours tomorrow. How soon can you start?" Ava laughed under her breath, not from amusement, from sheer unfiltered relief. "Now. I can start now." Naomi smiled. Clarence scribbled something in his notebook. "We'll set up a quick onboarding call," he said. "Welcome aboard, Ava." That word, welcome, echoed in her chest. She wasn't in yet. Not permanently. But it was a start. A real, breathing step towards something she'd nearly convinced herself wasn't possible anymore. As Naomi walked her back out through the creative buzz of the office, Ava's eyes soaked in every detail. The clipped conversations, the sound of laughter down the hall, the scratch of pens on paper, the life she had imagined from behind a coffee shop counter, now just inches away. "Trial gigs are still gigs," Naomi said as they stopped at the front desk. "And if you kill it, we'll have to figure out how to keep you." Ava nodded, throat thick. "I'll do my best." "Do your you," Naomi corrected, flashing a wink. "We've got enough bests around here." Outside, the sky had finally cleared. The rain had washed everything down to its bones, and for the first time in a long time, Ava stood under open air and felt the weight lift. Just a little. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over her contacts, unsure of why she felt compelled to do it, but she tapped open a new message. To Damien Holt. "Hi, you probably don't remember me, but I just wanted to say thank you for the 5 minutes. I got the job. Or, well, a start. And it meant more than I could say what you did. That's all." She stared at the screen, then pressed send, and let the world move forward. The morning air was thinner than usual, brisk with possibility. Ava Sinclair stared at her modest reflection in the mirror. Same thrift store blazer, same pulled-back hair, same nervous flutter somewhere under her ribs. But something else shimmered in her eyes now. Hope. It had been a long time since she looked at herself and saw someone becoming instead of breaking. She tucked her tablet and sketch pad into her slim black bag and stepped out onto the street, heart pounding for reasons that had little to do with public transportation and everything to do with the email she received just past midnight. Subject: "Welcome to the Keenan Beck team. Ava, excited to have you on board. Attached is the creative brief. Let's meet at 10 a.m. in the West Conference Room. Casual's fine. Bring your brain." Naomi. Simple. Direct. Terrifying. But Ava had already reviewed the brief 3 times before sunrise. A boutique coffee roaster rebranding campaign. Light on budget, but Naomi hinted it could become something bigger. Ava saw it as a test, and she intended to pass. As the bus turned the corner and her stop neared, her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her coat pocket with a sense of curiosity and froze. Remember you. I don't forget storms that arrive without warning. Her heart skipped. Damien. The message wasn't long, wasn't elaborate, but it pulsed with something unexpected. Not flirtation, not obligation, something rarer. Recognition. Her thumbs hovered, unsure how to respond. Everything in her life until now had been carefully coded for survival. Job applications, polite replies, muted expectations. This didn't fit any of those categories, so she didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she pocketed the phone, stepped off the bus, and walked in the lobby of Keenan Beck. Good morning, new recruit. Naomi's voice called from across the open floor as Ava entered. She turned and spotted Naomi balancing a coffee in one hand and a thumb drive in the other. Morning, Ava replied, catching the drive as Naomi tossed it her way. Pop this into your laptop when you get settled. It's the asset dump from the client. Mood boards, early logos, horror show typeface choices, aka a buffet of inspiration and chaos. Ava smiled. Sounds like my kind of mess. Naomi grinned, motioning toward an open table near the back wall. That's your corner for now. Wi-Fi passwords taped under the desk. Don't ask why. It's a long story involving a Nerf war and Clarence's fear of Post-its. The space was colorful and slightly disorganized. Whiteboards full of scribbled campaigns, a half-finished logo drawn directly onto the glass partition, sticky notes in every shade of neon imaginable. It wasn't polished. It was alive. Ava plugged in her laptop, opened the thumb drive, and dove in. An hour passed in a blur of rough sketches, swatch exploration, and sample copy readings. She could already see the campaign forming in her mind, a story about legacy, heritage, and modern craft. Midway through mocking up an updated logo grid, Naomi slid into the chair beside her, chewing on a bagel. What you got? She mumbled through a mouthful. Ava turned the screen toward her. Naomi studied it, then nodded. I like the serif lean, bold without being pretentious. You see the product names in vertical layout? I did, Ava said. I was thinking of pairing them with stylized initials to echo the roaster's original monogram, clean but with a nod to their roots. Naomi blinked. Damn, you actually read the full brief. Was I not supposed to? Naomi smirked. You'd be surprised. They both laughed. You're good, Naomi added, softer now. And we don't say that here unless we mean it. Ava felt her throat tighten slightly. Compliments had been rare currency lately. I want to be better than good, she said. Naomi stood and tossed her bagel wrapper into the bin. Then don't hold back. This place will meet you wherever your ambition is, provided you're the one chasing it. By late afternoon, Ava had compiled her concept sketches into a draft deck. It wasn't perfect, but it had bones, clean lines, soul. She named the campaign Brood Legacy. As she saved the file, her phone buzzed again. She reached for it, and this time she didn't hesitate. May I ask how the job turned out, or would that be intruding? She smiled, small and real. You may ask. I'm working on a brand refresh at Keenan Beck. Day one, no tears so far. There was a pause. Then, good. That's a place that knows how to use talent. If I can offer anything, feedback, introductions, don't hesitate. Ava stared at the message. This wasn't just a hope you're well follow-up. He was offering something. Connection, influence, power. And yet it didn't feel transactional. There was no assumption, no strings, just presence. I appreciate that, I really do. For now, I just need space to prove I can do this myself. Another long pause. Then, that's exactly why I offered. That evening, Ava walked home under a calm sky. The clouds had cleared completely, and the fading sun cast a golden hue across the buildings. Her feet were sore, her brain felt wrung out, her sketch pad was half full. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't surviving the day. She was building one. Step by messy, beautiful step. Ava hadn't touched caffeine in 3 days. Not because she didn't need it. She did. Badly. But because she was living in it. Designing for a boutique coffee roaster meant researching, storyboarding, and literally smelling espresso samples Naomi brought in like a proud pusher. By Thursday morning, she'd rewritten the tagline 6 times and reworked the color palette from warm neutrals to earthy terracotta with brass accents. The deck she was preparing for presentation was starting to feel right, balanced. like it had a heartbeat. Still, as she stood in the mirror and tried to smooth down the one stubborn strand of hair that refused to stay in her bun, her nerves coiled tight in her stomach. She was presenting this afternoon. Clarence Liu himself would be in the room. Ava wasn't afraid of being challenged. She was afraid of being forgettable. She tugged on her blazer, slipped her tablet into her tote, and headed out. The city met her with its usual thrum, traffic layered over sirens, over conversations that blurred into static. But today, she didn't feel small inside it. She felt sharpened by it. Let the day come. I'm ready. By 2 p.m., she was seated at the far end of the conference table in Keenan Beck's West Pitch Room. Her palms were slightly damp, but her presentation was loaded and her mock-ups were printed on crisp matte cardstock. Naomi strolled in with a soda can in hand and a wink. Relax, rookie. Clarence may be an art director, but he's still human. Mostly. Ava smiled, but it was tight. I'm not scared of him. I'm scared of not getting this right. Naomi slid into the seat beside her. You won't. You'll get it. And that's exactly what we need. 2 more creatives entered. Then Clarence himself. He didn't smile. He rarely did, but he offered Ava a nod as he took his seat at the head of the table. Let's begin. Ava stood and took a deep breath. She started with a story. Why coffee isn't just a drink, it's a ritual. A conversation starter. A legacy passed down in recipes and rituals. She moved into visuals, letting the mock-up speak first. Rich textures, hand-drawn flourishes, warm tones that welcomed rather than shouted. Then came the new logo, a blend of traditional serif and bold modern curves. When she revealed the tagline, Brewed Legacy, she let the words hang in the air. Clarence tilted his head. No one interrupted. She closed with a soft pitch, her voice steadier than she expected. This brand isn't trying to scream louder than the competition. It's trying to whisper louder, the kind of whisper people lean into. There was a pause. Then Naomi let out a quiet, nice. Clarence tapped his pen against the table once, twice, then said, You see brands as emotion. That's rare. Ava exhaled slowly. That's also valuable, he added. Finish the rest of the mock-ups and get them to me by Monday. I'll pitch the client myself. Nice work, Ava. She sat back down as the room began to move again. Papers shuffled, comments exchanged. But Ava sat still, because for the first time in a long while, she hadn't just survived a pitch. She had owned it. By the time she left work, her body buzzed with adrenaline, exhaustion, and a strange giddiness she hadn't felt since college. She ducked into a tiny corner cafe to treat herself to an overpriced cup of celebration. Hazelnut latte, extra foam, because she could. The barista scribbled something quirky on the cup and winked. She smiled, pulled out her phone, and typed a message before she could overthink it. I survived the pitch. No, better than survived. It went really well. Thought you'd like to know. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then hit send. A minute later, her phone buzzed. Didn't doubt that for a moment. In fact, check under your name at the pickup counter. Her brows furrowed. She turned toward the counter. A small white envelope lay there, tucked beneath the plastic name placard that read, Pick up here. She walked up, still unsure. This for me? The barista grinned. Guy came in earlier, said someone named Ava might stop by. She opened the envelope. Inside was a note on thick, textured stationery. For the woman who whispers louder than the noise. Beneath it, a gift card to the cafe. $50. Not flashy, not extravagant, just thoughtful. She laughed under her breath and tucked it into her pocket, cheeks warm. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture, but it was intentional. And somehow, that meant more. That night, curled up on her secondhand couch with a half-eaten grilled cheese and her tablet balanced on her knees, Ava sketched out new logo alternates. Her fingers moved easily, her mind buzzed. Not from fear, but from momentum. For the first time in years, the future didn't look like a foggy maybe. It looked like hers. Somewhere across the city, Damien set his phone down after rereading her message. A small smile ghosted his lips. He didn't believe in fate, but he did believe in moments. Unexpected, quiet ones that felt like they mattered more than they should. And Ava Sinclair, she was starting to feel like one of those. The following Monday, Ava walked into Keenan Beck with her mock-ups neatly arranged in her folder, 2 copies of her pitch deck printed on ivory stock, and a confidence that didn't feel borrowed anymore. It felt earned. Naomi greeted her with a high five and a grin. Clarence already flagged your deck to the client team. They're obsessed. You're officially in. Ava blinked. In? Naomi leaned closer, teasing. As in, you passed the trial. You'll finish the full campaign and work directly with our junior copy lead. Welcome to the freelance roster, Sinclair. A slow smile spread across Ava's face and something warm and solid landed in her chest. Belonging. It wasn't full-time. It wasn't a dream job with benefits and a corner office, but it was hers, and it was real. Naomi added, you're meeting with the client rep tomorrow. Small brand, big vision, no patience. You'll be leading creative. Ava nearly choked. Wait, I'm leading? Naomi smirked. Clarence likes to throw people in. You swim or you freelance somewhere else. The pressure should have terrified her. Instead, it sparked something fierce inside her ribcage. Sink or swim, Ava murmured. Got it. The day passed in a blur of color correction, layout tweaks, and content edits. Her inbox pinged steadily with scheduling updates, feedback loops, and more Slack messages than she'd seen in her life. And yet, she was in it. No longer looking from the outside in. She was doing. By 6:30 p.m., she finally leaned back in her chair, just rubbed the crick in her neck, and opened her phone. One unread message. I heard you impressed more than just the client. That's twice in 1 week. You're setting a dangerous precedent. She bit her lip, amused. Should I be worried? Not unless you plan to keep exceeding expectations, which I suspect you do. She typed, then deleted. Typed again. Maybe I do. I think I'm finally getting my legs under me. Another beat passed. Then, good. The world's louder than ever. We need more people with quiet conviction. She stared at that phrase. Quiet conviction. The words fit like a second skin. The strange thing was, he hadn't complimented her work exactly. He was seeing something else, something deeper. And Ava didn't know how to feel about that. She glanced around the office. Naomi had left. The others were gone. The lights had dimmed to motion sensor mode. The only sound was the humming of the HVAC and her own pulse in her ears. She texted back. If I didn't know better, I'd think you were trying to get to know me, Mr. Holt. This time, the pause was longer. Then, if I didn't know better, I'd say you already know how that story ends. Across town, Damien sat behind his glass-walled office at Holt International. The skyline glittered beyond the windows, but his gaze was fixed on his phone, the glow of the screen flickering just enough to betray the smirk he rarely allowed in public. She was sharp, grounded, unexpected. He didn't do intrigue anymore. He did results, contracts, acquisitions. Still, Ava Sinclair had crept into the corner of his mind, slipping past his defenses without asking permission, and that unsettled him, which, of course, only made him want to know more. The next morning, Ava arrived early, intentionally. She needed quiet before the meeting, needed to center herself in the work, not the expectation. Her favorite table in the corner of the Keenan Beck office was empty. She slid into the seat and opened her sketch pad, reviewing brand notes one last time. This time, the project was for a small artisan bath and body brand with an eco-conscious slant. The founder had high standards, a Pinterest board full of conflicting aesthetics, and, according to Naomi, a hair-trigger bullshit detector. So, naturally, Ava was leading the concept pitch. She breathed in, then out. No time for self-doubt now. By 10 a.m., the meeting room was set. Mock-ups were pinned to the cork wall, the product samples arranged beside a potted succulent for ambiance, and Ava stood ready. The founder, a crisp woman in her late 30s with a minimalist aesthetic and a no-nonsense tone, entered with 2 assistants and a steaming cup of matcha. Ava greeted her calmly, introduced herself, and began. 15 minutes in, she showed the alternate packaging layout, soft matte textures, embossed accents, warm neutral tones. The founder's brow lifted. That font is exactly what I imagined. Clean, but grounded. You listened. Ava exhaled slowly. I wanted the visual language to reflect your values. Subtle elegance over designed clutter. Integrity over trends. The woman nodded once, then smiled. Let's move forward. That evening, Ava walked home in a soft rain. Her bag felt lighter, her step looser, her phone buzzed. Was I wrong, or did you just win over someone notoriously unwinnable? You have spies in every agency, don't you? Not spies, just... And yes, you impressed her. Thank you. It means more than I know how to say. Then don't say it, just keep going. She paused under a streetlight, the glow catching the raindrops on her sleeves. A warmth pressed behind her ribs. Not romantic yet, but real. They weren't just exchanging pleasantries anymore. They were orbiting something, something unspoken and far from safe. But maybe, just maybe, worth following. The city glowed outside Ava's window, quiet, golden, almost forgiving. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by sketch paper, empty tea mugs, and one flickering candle that had burned far past its prime. Her presentation was technically done. The deliverables were packaged, the files renamed and uploaded, and the final notes sent to Naomi. But she wasn't ready to stop. Not yet. She traced soft lines with her stylus across her tablet, eyes half-lidded, heart full and steady. Her fingers moved instinctively, designs not for approval, not for client specs or agency briefs, just hers. The room hummed with silence. Ava rarely felt stillness like this. Not since before. Before the chaos, before the cross-country move, before she'd lost her footing and forgot what passion sounded like in her own chest. And somehow, without her noticing, that sound had returned. She leaned back, let the stylus fall beside her, and closed her eyes. Her phone buzzed, a quiet ripple through the air. She ignored it. For 10 full seconds, she just breathed. Then she reached over and checked. Still working? Or are you pretending to sleep while editing at 1 a.m.? A laugh tumbled from her throat, quiet and full of surprise. He wasn't wrong, she replied. I don't pretend. I design until I lose track of time. Good. That's when the real ideas show up. Another buzz just seconds later. I remember that feeling. I miss it. She paused, thumbs hovering. That was new. Personal. Vulnerable. You don't still design? Not really. I strategize. I negotiate. I command rooms full of people who pretend to be listening. But design? No. I lost that version of myself years ago. Ava chewed her lip, uncertain whether to tread further. She typed, "What happened?" A minute passed, then 2. Finally, I stopped creating the day my brother died. He was the one who reminded me why it mattered. The air shifted. Ava sat straighter, the silence now heavy with something sacred. Her fingers moved slowly. I'm sorry. That kind of loss, it changes everything. It did. And then I let the rest of me go silent too. That's the part I regret. Ava swallowed. He hadn't offered a story. He had offered a truth. And that felt rarer than any polished confession. She stared at her half-finished illustration on the tablet screen, bright colors, soft lines, no client in mind, just feeling. And suddenly she wanted him to see it. Not the finished version. The raw one. The human one. She took a screenshot and attached it without overthinking. This is what showed up tonight. His reply came quickly. It's alive. That's what's missing in so much design now. This has breath in it. Ava exhaled. She didn't realize she'd been holding anything in until then. That's what I'm chasing. Design that breathes, that reminds people they still can too. And are you remembering that? She smiled faintly. Tonight, yes. Another pause. Then, surprisingly, can I ask you something personal? Her pulse jumped. Only if I can say no. Deal. Why were you crying in my car that day? The question landed softly, but it was sharp with memory. Ava hesitated. No one had asked that. Not like that. Because I thought I had failed before I even began. I thought I was invisible and that no one would ever see what I could be, not just what I wasn't. Silence. Then it's not what I saw. That's not who I see now. Ava felt something open in her. Slowly. Carefully. Like a door that had been locked so long she'd forgotten what the hinges sounded like. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Instead, she stood, powered off her tablet, and climbed into bed with her phone resting on the pillow beside her. She stared at the dark ceiling for a long time, the city breathing quietly outside her window. Damien's last message blinked back at her. That's not who I see now. It shouldn't mean so much. But it did. Not because he was rich or powerful or unreadably sharp, but because when everything in her had screamed that she didn't matter, he had simply offered stillness. And now, words. No pressure, just presence. The kind of attention that wasn't about ownership. It was about witnessing. Ava closed her eyes. and for the first time in months, fell asleep without dread, following her into her dreams. The glass in Damien Holt's office reflected more than the city skyline. It reflected the man who sat beneath it, motionless, with his suit jacket off and his sleeves rolled up, as though he'd been fighting something that had nothing to do with spreadsheets. He wasn't working. Not really. The numbers had stopped making sense hours ago, not because they were wrong, but because they were exactly right. Precise. Predictable. Perfect. And that was the problem. They were easy. Too easy. His desk, once pristine, now bore the signs of someone stalling. A half-empty glass of whiskey, a folder open but unread, a stylus resting beside a locked tablet he hadn't sketched on in years. On the far wall hung a single-framed photograph. 2 boys on a beach, one older, stiff and serious, trying not to smile. The other, grinning so wide it looked like the sky had poured straight into his chest. Leo, his brother. Gone 7 years now. Sometimes it still felt like a bad dream, a car accident, a summer night, a phone call that cleaved his world into before and after. But more often, it felt like failure. Because Leo had been light. And Damien, he had never figured out how to live in that light without him. He'd stopped painting, stopped building, stopped designing. Somewhere in the silence that followed, he'd become what he thought the world demanded. A polished man in glass towers, not a boy who used to stay up all night drawing comic panels with his kid brother. And then a woman had cried in the backseat of his car. And somehow, everything shifted. Not in a grand, romantic way. Not like the movies. It was subtler than that. It was in the way she apologized between sobs. The way she didn't ask for anything, even when she clearly needed something. The way she took up space like someone who had forgotten how and was just now remembering. Ava Sinclair hadn't asked for him to see her, but he had. And in doing so, he had started seeing parts of himself again, parts he had buried alongside Leo. Damien stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city pulsed beneath him, alive, relentless, full of people who didn't know he existed and wouldn't care if he didn't. He preferred it that way. Usually, but Ava's message had lingered all day on his phone. Not just the words, but the tone, hopeful, cautiously alive. Raw in the way real things always were. He thought of her illustration from the night before, the one she'd sent without polish, without pretense, just a quiet offering of her inner world. It had breathed. He couldn't remember the last time something made him pause like that. Even now, he could still see it. Soft lines, unguarded motion, color that didn't scream but hummed like a lullaby. He knew talent, had hired hundreds of creatives, sat through thousands of portfolios, but this wasn't talent. This was truth. And it scared him a little, because he could feel himself wanting to be near it. And he had promised himself he wouldn't want things anymore. Not like that. His phone buzzed. He almost didn't look, but the name on the screen made him smile without meaning to. Elijah Carr. Best friend, legal counsel, professional grump. You're not at the dinner. People are asking questions. Also, Lena is here, wearing red, which you know is a threat. Damien sighed. He'd forgotten. The fundraiser dinner for the urban arts nonprofit Holt International had been a major sponsor for 3 years. He was supposed to give a short speech. He texted back. Cover for me. Tell them I got pulled into something urgent. Define urgent. Existential self-reflection. You're the worst. I know. He set the phone down, then turned back to the photo on the wall. Leo had wanted to open a creative studio, not a massive agency, just a modest, vibrant space where ideas lived and people made things that mattered. Design with a pulse, he used to call it. Damien had loved that phrase. Still did. He wondered not for the first time what Leo would have thought of the man he'd become. Would he recognize him? Would he be proud? Would he believe in him? Damien's throat tightened. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he did. And that's what hurt the most. That night, as the city wound down and light bled from the skyline like spilled ink, Damien walked the long hallway to his private penthouse, loosened his tie, and opened his inbox. There it was. The last thing Ava had sent. A revised concept sketch for her brand refresh. Not shared with him, he wasn't her client, but it had found its way to his folder. A shared cloud directory from Naomi, most likely. Unintentional, but not unwelcome. He clicked, The image unfolded in high resolution, delicate typography paired with wild natural flourishes, like something ancient had been reborn in soft ink. He stared at it for a long time, then opened a blank tab and started to draw. Just a shape, a curve, a loose, imperfect spiral. For the first time in 7 years, not for business, not for branding, just because. And something inside him, something brittle and long forgotten, shifted. He wasn't sure if it would hold, but for now, it was enough to feel the movement. The cafe was tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner, unremarkable except for the warm citrus and cardamom aroma that drifted out whenever the door opened. It wasn't trendy, no exposed brick, no oat milk branding campaign, just scratched wood tables, real ceramic mugs, and a chalkboard menu that changed whenever the barista got bored. Ava liked that about it. It felt unpretentious, honest, which was probably why she'd suggested it. She hadn't expected him to say yes. She hadn't even expected him to read her message. But when she texted, "If you ever want coffee without a filter, meet me here, noon," the reply had come 5 minutes later. "I'll be there. I'm curious what kind of coffee doesn't need a filter." Now, seated by the window with her mug half full and her nerves dancing at the edge of every thought, Ava checked her phone again, 11:59. He wouldn't come. Yeah, she told herself it was fine, good even, safer. Men like Damien Holt didn't meet, they summoned. And yet the door opened, and there he was. No entourage, no suit, no curated presence. Just dark jeans, a black cashmere sweater, and the same stillness that had unnerved her the first time. But now it comforted her, too. He scanned the cafe once, found her immediately, and offered a nod. That nod was everything. Greeting, acknowledgement, intention. Ava's heart answered before her words could. He slid into the seat across from her. No fanfare, no small talk. Just a moment. Shared. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said softly. "I wasn't sure either," he replied. They both smiled, quiet and knowing. "I didn't invite you here to talk about work," Ava said, folding her hands around her mug. "And I didn't want to send another message I wasn't brave enough to say out loud." Damien tilted his head. "Then say it." She exhaled. "I'm not used to being seen. Not really. Not in a way that feels safe. And I think you saw me that night, in your car, at my worst. And you didn't flinch. You didn't even ask for anything in return. And She paused, gathering herself. "I wanted to know why." The air between them held still. He didn't blink, didn't shift. He just looked at her. "I've seen a lot of people lose things," Damien said finally, "but very few still carry their dignity when they do. You were broken, but not ashamed of it. I respected that." Ava's throat tightened. "I wasn't sure you'd remember," she said. "I remember what matters," he said, "and people who still show up even when they're unraveling matter." That silence again, but this time it felt full, not awkward, not uncertain, just enough. She took a sip of her coffee. "You're different than I expected." "Disappointed?" he asked, dry smile tugging at his mouth. "No," she said, holding his gaze. "Worse. Intrigued." He laughed, soft, real, like gravel being warmed by the sun. Ava leaned back, more comfortable now. "I'm not looking for anything from you. I just wanted to say thank you. In person." "You already did." "But I meant it this time." He looked at her then. Really looked. And for a second, Ava wondered what he saw when he looked at her now. No longer the girl sobbing in the backseat of his car, but the woman who had rebuilt something, even if it still trembled at the edges. "I came," he said, "because you made it feel safe to show up." That caught her off guard. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've spent years being the person people either fear, use, or admire from a distance. Very few invite me into a moment that's real. You did." Her voice was smaller now. "I didn't think I had anything to offer you. You had your honesty." That landed deep. Ava looked down at her mug, emotions swirling too fast to name. She wasn't used to people reflecting her light back without trying to claim it. "Can I ask you something?" she said, eyes lifting again. He nodded. "If you hadn't been in that car that night, would we have ever met?" Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward just slightly, elbows on the table, and said, "I'm not sure, but I'm certain I would have noticed you eventually." A pause. "Why?" "Because I noticed things that breathe differently." She didn't reply. She couldn't. All she could do was feel the truth of it settle into the room like warm sunlight. They sat there for a while longer, sipped coffee, let the words drift into pauses. No agenda, No power play, just proximity. And when they finally stood to leave, Damien didn't offer to walk her out, didn't overstep. He simply said this wasn't a mistake. Ava nodded. I know. Their hands didn't touch, their eyes did, and that was enough. For now. Ava Sinclair had officially been back at work for 3 hours. She'd answered emails, finalized a client mood board, even reviewed edits from the junior copywriter she'd been paired with on the Bath and Body campaign. But none of it had touched her, because her mind was still sitting across from Damien Holt at that corner cafe, watching him smile, watching him see her. The moment hadn't been romantic. Not outwardly. No candlelight. No accidental hand brushes. No lingering goodbyes, but it had cracked open something she didn't know she'd closed, and now everything felt a little louder in comparison. Too sharp. Too shallow. Too not him. Earth to Sinclair, a voice called. Ava blinked and looked up. Raya was leaning on the edge of her desk, one perfectly sculpted brow arched high. Sorry, Ava said, straightening. I was just thinking about Mr. Broody Billionaire in the black sweater. Raya interrupted, smirking. Yeah, your face gave it away. Ava groaned and dropped her forehead to her desk. It wasn't like that. I didn't say it was like anything, but the fact that you immediately feel the need to defend it tells me everything I need to know. Raya? Oh, please, Raya said, slipping into the seat across from her. You go out for coffee with a man like that and come back looking like you've discovered the meaning of life, and I'm supposed to pretend it was just caffeine? Ava cracked a smile despite herself. It wasn't a date, she insisted. Raya leaned in. No, it was something worse. Ava frowned. Worse? Raya nodded solemnly. It was emotionally intimate. You talked. I hate how accurate that is. Raya tilted her head. So, what's the problem? Ava hesitated. I don't know what this is. Just he's hard to read. He's not trying to be unreadable, Raya said, gentler now. He's trying not to be felt. That landed harder than Ava expected. She picked at the edge of her notebook. Do you think I'm projecting? Like seeing something that isn't there? No, Raya said without hesitation. I think he saw something in you before you even knew you were worth seeing again. That pulled a breath from her lungs she hadn't realized she was holding. She whispered, That's the problem. Raya blinked. Why? Because if he sees me, I don't get to hide anymore. Raya leaned forward, both elbows on her knees. Ava, you've been through hell. You started over with nothing but talent, guts, and a cracked phone screen. You're allowed to want something that isn't survival. Ava met her eyes. And, Raya added with a smirk, it doesn't hurt that the man looks like he stepped out of a GQ winter issue titled Emotional Damage But Make It Hot. Ava burst out laughing, loud enough that a designer across the room looked up and grinned. Stop, she hissed, covering her face. I won't, Raya said proudly. You've been glowing since he texted you about the client pitch. Now you're smiling for real. That's progress. Ava shook her head, her smile lingering. Still, her mind drifted back, not to the words, but the moments between them. The unspoken understanding. The way Damien had looked at her like she wasn't just talented, but true. That glance, quiet, steady, a half second too long, had stayed with her all night. It wasn't attraction. It was recognition, and that scared her more than desire ever could. That evening, Ava returned to her apartment with a half-empty salad container in one hand and a sketch pad in the other. She sat by the window, letting the city's noise hum through her like static. Her phone rested beside her. She hadn't heard from Damien since the cafe, and that was fine. It was. Still, she picked up the phone, opened their thread, and read their last few messages, back and forth, thoughtful, almost shy. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't text him. She just stared at the blinking cursor. Then set the phone down again. Sometimes it was enough just to know someone existed on the other end, that they saw you. No chase, no game, just a thread, quiet and waiting, like a door left ajar. Not an invitation, not yet, but not a goodbye either. And maybe that was where it had to begin. Morning sunlight spilled through the Keenan Beck windows like golden ink across a blank page. Ava stood in front of a wall-length screen, hands clasped behind her back, waiting. Her second client pitch, hers. No Naomi to buffer, no Clarence to lean on. Just Ava, a junior copywriter named Jules, and a client rep who hadn't smiled once during onboarding. The presentation deck was loaded, the mock-ups were sharp, and yet her throat felt dry as paper. "Don't overtalk your slides," she whispered to herself. "Pause. Breathe. Don't fidget." "You say that like I'm the one giving the pitch," Jules muttered beside her with a nervous smile. Ava gave a soft laugh and rolled her shoulders back. "Sorry. Habit." The client entered, a sleek woman in a charcoal blazer and ballet flats, tablet in hand, and disinterest etched into her posture. Behind her, two assistants hovered like well-dressed shadows. Ava didn't flinch. She had this. The presentation began. Ava started with the brand's existing identity. Clean, minimal, but cold. "It doesn't whisper," she said. "It reports, and your brand deserves to speak." Slide by slide, she wove her vision. New packaging with soft edges and eco-conscious ink, a color palette rooted in natural tones, salted clay, dusk blue, honey ash, typography with enough space to breathe. She didn't rush, she didn't stumble, and when the last slide disappeared into a soft fade, she turned back toward the client and waited. Silence, the kind of silence that made designers sweat. Then, "This feels like us, only better," the client said slowly, looking between Ava and the mock-ups. "Elegant but grounded, feminine without being precious. A beat. We're in." Jules exhaled so hard it nearly knocked over a paper cup. Ava smiled, not polite, not nervous, earned. Later, seated at her usual spot in the open studio, Ava let the adrenaline drain while Jules bounced around like a caffeinated intern. "You crushed that," he said for the fourth time. "Clarence will freak out, in a good way." Ava sipped her tea. "You're the one who came up with the Earth to Essence tagline. Don't sell yourself short," Jules beamed, then added with a mischievous grin, "Also, you got a delivery." "What?" Jules pointed behind her. A small, elegantly wrapped box sat on her desk, next to a folded white card. The packaging was minimal, matte black, gold-foiled edges tied with a slender ribbon. Ava stared at it. "What is it? What is it?" Jules asked. "I don't know," she said truthfully. She opened the card first. "A pitch that breathes deserves tools that do the same." Her fingers paused. Inside the box was a custom-designed stylus, sleek, weighted just right. Her initials engraved along the edge in tiny, thoughtful letters, AS. She turned it over in her hands, stunned. It was the kind of thing no one needed, but every designer dreamed of owning. "Wait, is this," Jules leaned closer, "from him?" Ava slid the card into her bag and cleared her throat. "It's a thank you. That's all." But it wasn't, and she knew it. That evening, as she walked home with the stylus tucked safely in her bag and the card folded so small it disappeared into her palm, her phone buzzed. "I didn't want to interrupt your day, but if you're free for dinner, I know a quiet spot. No expectations, just conversation." Ava stopped on the sidewalk. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady, warm, quiet. She typed, "Tonight? If you're not too tired." "I'm tired, but I'd still like to go. I'll send a car." She hesitated. Then, "I'll walk. Just tell me where." The restaurant was hidden inside a brick facade on a quiet street that tourists never found. No sign, just a small brass plaque that read Linden. She arrived 5 minutes early. He was already there. Damien stood as she entered, dressed not in power but in ease, no tie, sleeves cuffed to his forearms, watch glinting subtly in the candlelight. He didn't kiss her cheek, didn't touch her hand, just offered a seat, and something even rarer, his full attention. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "Why?" "Because I didn't want to make this something it's not." He studied her. "And what is this, Ava?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "You're a man used to control. I'm a woman just learning how to trust herself again. So maybe this is a meeting of two people who don't quite know what they want but are curious enough to stay in the room." He sat back, then smiled. "A rare kind of honesty," he murmured, "almost dangerous. And yet here we are." The server brought water. Menus stayed closed. They talked about cities, about branding, about why certain fonts made your chest ache and why silence wasn't always empty. They didn't talk about the past. Not tonight. Not yet. But Ava left the restaurant 2 hours later with the sense that something had begun. Not fast, not fiery, but deep. And she wasn't sure whether to be scared or grateful. So she texted only one thing when she got home. "Thank you for the kind of dinner that doesn't need dessert." His reply came a moment later. "Next time, we'll skip dinner and just talk." Ava didn't sleep that night, not for lack of trying. She lay in bed with the city's quiet hum pressing through her window, replaying every moment of the dinner with Damien. The way he listened, the way he didn't interrupt, the way he looked at her like she was already whole, even while she still felt like a mosaic, pieced together, fragile in places, beautiful only in the right light. It hadn't been romantic, but it hadn't been neutral either. It existed in that strange, powerful space between possibility and permission, and it haunted her. She finally gave up trying to sleep at 4:12 a.m., made a cup of too strong coffee, and opened her laptop. She needed to focus. Her next presentation was due Friday. Ava opened the mood board for the Bath and Body client, refreshed the palette, updated the grid, and still couldn't shake the memory of the way Damien had leaned forward during dinner when she talked about typography as personality. The difference between Helvetica and Garamond, she had said, is like the difference between silence and a whisper. One is absence, the other is intention. And Damien, normally so reserved, had smiled, fully. A real one, like her words had hit somewhere personal. She wanted to pretend it hadn't happened, but pretending wouldn't make the feeling go away. By noon, Ava was back at Keenan Beck, pretending to be more rested than she was. Naomi spotted her instantly. "You're glowing," she said, eyeing Ava's face as she stirred her tea in the communal kitchen. "Am I?" Ava asked too casually. Naomi crossed her arms. "Oh no, I know that look. It's the I didn't sleep because someone's voice kept echoing in my head look. I have a deadline." "You also have a crush," Naomi replied, smug. "I have restraint," Ava muttered. Naomi laughed. "Keep telling yourself that." Ava didn't answer, mostly because Naomi wasn't wrong. That afternoon, she received a Slack message from Raya. "You free for lunch? Need gossip, also carbs." They met at a sidewalk cafe a few blocks from the office. Raya arrived wearing sunglasses too big for her face and an attitude too loud for the table. "You saw him again," she said without greeting. Ava blinked. "Hello to you too. Don't play coy. Your skin is doing that soft glow thing again. It was just dinner. Dinner with a man who doesn't do casual anything. Ava, I've seen him negotiate down Fortune 500 CEOs without raising his voice. If he's spending his time on you, it means something." Ava sipped her lemonade, choosing her words carefully. "I don't want to read too much into it. I can't afford to." Raya leaned in, serious now. "Can I ask you something?" Ava nodded. "Are you protecting yourself from him, or from what it would mean to let yourself be seen by someone like him?" Ava's heart caught. I'm not used to that kind of attention," she said quietly. "Not from someone who doesn't want something in return." Raya softened. "What if what he wants isn't control? What if it's just closeness?" Ava didn't answer, because that possibility scared her more than any hidden motive. That night, she stayed late at the office, finishing mock-ups in the low hum of creative silence. It was nearly 9 p.m. when she finally stood, stretching her spine and gathering her things. As she turned off her desk lamp, her phone buzzed. "Are you still working? Just about to head home. I'm still at the office. Couldn't sleep. Want to talk?" She hesitated. Then, on the phone? "No. Come up." A pause, then another message. "Just talk. I'll keep my distance." 15 minutes later, she stepped into the private elevator at Holt International. His assistant had already buzzed her in. She felt like an imposter, cardigan, canvas tote, sneakers still a little dirty from the sidewalk. But when the elevator doors opened, Damien was waiting. No suit, just slacks and a dress shirt, sleeves undone, collar open. A man, not a brand. "You came," he said, voice low. "You asked." He led her to a small lounge tucked inside his office suite, bookshelves, a fireplace, a leather couch that looked far too soft to be corporate. She sat at one end, he sat at the other. A long pause passed between them. Then she asked, "Why me?" He didn't blink. "Because you remind me of who I used to be." That stunned her. "Before you built all this? Before I stopped caring about why I built it?" She searched his face for irony. There was none. They talked about grief, about Leo, about the silence that follows sudden loss, about the difference between loneliness and solitude. And then, for a moment, neither of them spoke at all. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was sacred. Ava looked down at her hands, then over at him. He wasn't watching her lips or her legs or her body. He was watching her eyes, seeing her, and something fluttered low in her chest. She stood. "I should go." He didn't stop her, didn't ask for more. He only rose with her, walked her to the elevator, and waited in silence. When the doors opened, she turned toward him, heart thudding. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not making this anything more than what it is." He nodded, but his eyes said something else, and hers did too. They didn't touch. But when the elevator doors slid shut between them, Ava knew this wasn't nothing. It was becoming something, and that was even more dangerous. The email arrived on a Thursday morning like a quiet bomb. Subject: Joint Presentation Request Holt Intellects Grayson Group from lena.grayson@graysonglobal.com, dholt@holtinternational.com. Damien didn't react when he opened it, but his jaw set. The message was brief, clipped, and unmistakably strategic. "Damien, let's stop avoiding the inevitable. We both know the merger has potential, and the board wants movement. Next Friday, private session, just you and me. Lena." There was no, "I hope this finds you well." No, "Look forward to seeing you." Not even a signature block. Just Lena. She always signed like that, even before things ended, even when things were good, if they ever had been. Damien read the message twice, then once more. He didn't delete it. He didn't respond either. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, staring out at the skyline, a stretch of glass and cloud that once felt like the top of the world. Now it just felt claustrophobic. Lena Grayson had always been a force. She didn't enter rooms, she claimed them. Where Damien held power through precision, Lena wielded hers like a sharpened smile. Charisma when she wanted it, calculation when she didn't. They had been engaged once, 3 years ago. The headlines had called it a power union poised to redefine the tech landscape. But it hadn't been a union, it had been a merger. And Damien had walked away from it without ceremony. No public fallout, no press statement, just silence, which in their world was the loudest ending of all. Ava felt the shift before she knew the reason. It wasn't something Damien said. It was what he didn't say. That week, his messages slowed. The warmth in his words cooled, not icy, but distant. She didn't take it personally, not at first. They were busy. He was busy, and she had her own work to focus on. Still, when her mock-up update got a generic "looks good, carry on," instead of one of his thoughtful off-center replies, she paused, then closed the chat. Something had changed. She didn't know what, but she felt it, and that hurt more than she expected. At Keenan Beck, Naomi noticed too. "You good?" she asked one morning, halfway through a project review. Ava nodded. "Yeah, just tired." "You sure it's not him?" Ava looked up, startled. Naomi shrugged. "I've seen that look. Happens when someone close pulls back without warning. You start wondering if you imagined the whole thing." Ava exhaled. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those of us who've been there," Naomi replied, soft. "Want to talk about it?" Ava hesitated, then said quietly, "I think I got too comfortable thinking he might be different." "Maybe he is," Naomi said, "but even the good ones sometimes have old ghosts to deal with." Ava stared at her, then something in her chest sank, because she realized she didn't actually know what haunted Damien. Not really, not yet. 2 days later, Ava found out, and not from Damien. She was grabbing coffee from the street cart outside Keenan Beck when her phone buzzed. A link from Raya. No caption, just one article. She clicked it. Lena Grayson and Damien Holt, the power pair back at the table. After a quiet 3-year split, whispers circulate that the two titans may soon merge companies, and possibly more. The photo hit harder than it should have. Lena in a red blazer, sleek and camera-ready. Damien beside her, neutral-faced but present, too present. They weren't touching, but the space between them looked deliberate. Ava read the article 3 times, standing there on the curb, steam rising from her paper cup. Then she closed the link and tucked her phone away. She didn't cry, didn't text him, didn't let herself feel it yet, but the ache in her chest was real. Not because she thought she had a claim on him, but because for a few fleeting moments, she'd let herself believe she could. That night, she opened her sketch pad and stared at the blank page for almost an hour. Not because she didn't have ideas, but because none of them felt honest anymore. Not with the story she was telling herself, collapsing under the weight of what she didn't know, and what he hadn't told her. The elevator ride to Holt International's executive floor had never felt this long. Ava kept her shoulders square, her hands tucked neatly around the strap of her bag, and her expression composed. Every step forward was deliberate. But inside, chaos. The article had been live for 2 days. The picture was still burned into her brain. Damien and Lena. Not touching, but close. Unified in the way only people with shared history could be. He hadn't messaged her. Not once. And Ava? She hadn't messaged him either, because she didn't know what to say, because part of her wanted to believe it was nothing, and part of her knew that was a lie. When Raya asked if she wanted to ignore it or confront it, Ava had said quietly, "Neither. I just want to understand what I am to him, or if I'm anything at all." Raya had nodded, her voice uncharacteristically gentle. "Then ask." So she did. A quick, carefully worded message. "If you're free, I'd like to see you, just to clear the air, and maybe the silence." Damien had responded within minutes. "I'm here. Come up." She was standing at the threshold of his office, staring at the dark glass doors like they might offer a preview of what she'd find inside. She knocked once, then stepped in. He was by the window, suit jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He turned when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Relief, guilt, something he didn't let her see for long. "Ava," he said. "Damien." Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. He gestured to the small seating area near the bookshelf. "Sit?" She did, but not fully relaxed. "I saw the article," she said simply. "I didn't come here to ask for an explanation. I just want clarity." He nodded slowly, watching her with the quiet caution of a man who knew the next words might cost him more than he expected. "It's not what it looked like." "Then help me understand what it was." He exhaled. "Lena reached out 2 weeks ago. The merger between our companies was proposed last year and shelved. She's trying to revive it. Strictly business." "Is that what she wants?" Ava asked. "Or is that what you're telling yourself?" He didn't flinch, but he didn't answer right away either. "I ended things with Lena for a reason," he said at last. "We were aligned professionally, but not emotionally. Not anymore. And now, she's still good at the former," he admitted, "but the latter is not something I'm open to revisiting." Ava studied him, and then said, "You didn't tell me." "That I had an ex with a private jet and sharp elbows?" he asked dryly. "That she was still in your life?" Damien went quiet. Not defensive, not dismissive. Just quiet. Then, "Because I didn't want you to think this, whatever this is, was complicated." Ava laughed once, not unkindly. "Damien, it's already complicated. You're you, I'm me. And the whole thing started with me crying in your car." His lips twitched. "Still the strangest icebreaker of my life." "I just needed to know I wasn't being folded into something unfinished," she said more softly. "I've been someone's placeholder before. I won't be again." His head lifted, and in his face, something unguarded bloomed. Not panic, not persuasion, but recognition. "I never saw you as that," he said, "not even for a second." She held his gaze, and in the silence that followed, something old in both of them broke. A wall neither had named, a fear neither had shared. Damien looked at her like he wanted to reach out, but didn't. And Ava? She stood before he could. "I appreciate the clarity," she said. "I'm glad I asked." He rose, slower. "No," she interrupted gently. "Don't ruin it by trying to fix what isn't broken. You told me the truth, that's enough." He nodded. "Once." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Just so you know," she said without turning around, "when I said I wasn't looking for anything from you, I meant it. But what happened between us, those conversations, those moments, that was something. Maybe not everything, but something." Then she walked out. And for the first time since they met, she didn't look back. Damien stood alone in his office long after she left. And for the first time in years, he realized power couldn't help him here. Clarity had a cost, and letting someone in meant learning how to stand in the quiet they left behind. The mock-up file wouldn't export, not correctly, at least. Every time Ava clicked render, the font corrupted, or the layers shifted, or the high-res image warped like it had been soaked in rainwater. She'd been trying for 2 hours. At one point, she whispered a very quiet but very sincere threat to her laptop. It ignored her. Her eyes burned from staring at the screen. Her tea had gone cold. The clock on her wall said it was nearly midnight, but she couldn't stop. Not with the client review first thing in the morning. And not after the way the past week had unraveled. She was tired, not just physically, but emotionally. quietly raw in a way she hadn't let herself feel since the early days of her move, when everything felt brittle and temporary. And now? Now she had work, she had direction, she had momentum. But still, something inside her felt shaky, because he had felt like a safe place for her heart to rest. And now she wasn't sure if he was still that. The ping of her laptop brought her back. Render failed. Again. She swore softly and rubbed her forehead. Her phone buzzed. She didn't check it immediately, couldn't handle more emails or late-night Slack messages, but it buzzed again, and this time, she looked. Still awake? She blinked, then exhaled. Unfortunately. Do you want to talk? Just talk. She stared at the message and then, without thinking too hard, typed, "Yes." Her phone rang less than a minute later. She answered on the second ring. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi," he echoed, voice lower than usual, softer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was familiar, a heartbeat. "You sound tired," he said. "I am." "Work?" "Life glitches. Expectations." She paused. "You?" "Same." That made her smile. Just a little. "You reached out," she said softly. "I know." "Why?" "Because when something good pulls away from me, I tend to let it go. And this time, I didn't want to." Ava didn't reply at first. She just listened to the quiet hum of the line. His breathing, her own heartbeat slowing. "I don't know what we are," she said after a while, "but I don't want to pretend none of it happened." "I don't either. I'm not asking you for promises," she said. "Good," he replied, "because I don't have any polished ones left. Just pieces I'm still figuring out. Maybe that's enough." She could almost hear his expression shift. A slight smile, not seen but sensed. "Tell me what's wrong with the file," he said suddenly. Ava blinked. "What?" "Your mock-up. You sound like you're 3 pixels away from a breakdown. Let me help." "You know design?" "I used to." She hesitated, then opened her laptop again. "The font overrides every time I export to PDF," she said. "I've tried resetting the embed settings, but it won't hold. I've checked the layer groups, flattened the logo." Damien hummed thoughtfully. "Are you using a custom font from that open source library you love?" She smiled despite herself. "Maybe. Try converting it to outline before export. It bypasses the font file entirely." Ava paused, then followed the steps. Clicked export, watched it finish without error. The final PDF opened clean, crisp, perfect. She stared at it. "Damien," she whispered. "That worked." "I still have a few tricks," he said quietly. She sat back in her chair, staring at the rendered file. Not because she was surprised it worked, but because of how it felt to be helped, not rescued, just seen, supported. "You didn't have to fix it," she said. "I didn't fix you. I helped with a file. Still, you called. I missed your voice." That stopped her. Ava closed her eyes. "I missed yours too." They stayed on the line a little longer. No urgent reason, just a shared stillness. A breath across city blocks that felt like a quiet promise neither was ready to name. Eventually, she said, "I should sleep." "I hope you do." "Good night, Damien." "Good night, Ava." She hung up, set her phone down, and for the first time in a week, she smiled without confusion. Ava didn't expect Clarence to be in the meeting. He rarely sat in on creative team reviews unless a campaign was going south or skyrocketing. So when she walked into the conference room and saw him standing at the far end, sleeves rolled to the elbows of his dark blazer, scanning one of her printed layouts like it held stock market secrets, her pulse jumped. Naomi caught the look on Ava's face and smirked. "Relax," she whispered as they took seats. "It's a good sign. Clarence only shows up when he thinks something's worth backing or blocking, but I think it's the first one." Ava wasn't so sure, but when Clarence finally spoke, his voice wasn't sharp. It was intrigued. "This tone," he said, gesturing toward one of Ava's digital boards. "You managed to thread heritage without nostalgia. It feels clean but emotional. That's rare." Ava blinked. "Thank you," she said carefully. He nodded once. "This campaign has legs. If the client signs off tomorrow, we'll build a cross-channel strategy and let you lead." Her heart stuttered. "Lead the full campaign?" Naomi grinned beside her. "Told you." Clarence looked up from the board, eyes direct but not unkind. "You've earned the team's attention, Ava. Keep earning it." It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either, and from Clarence Liu, it might as well have been a standing ovation. By lunch, the news had trickled through the office. Ava Sinclair is leading the rebrand. Jules dropped by her desk with a donut and a ridiculous bow scribbled on the bag. Creative lead starter pack, he said proudly. Sugar and sabotage. You're welcome. Ava laughed. She should have been elated, and part of her was. But there was something else too, a flicker of static, a strange tension that vibrated just under the surface. She couldn't name it, not until she overheard the conversation near the printer. Two junior designers whispering just loud enough to be overheard. I mean, yeah, she's talented, but, like, isn't she friends with Holt or something? Friends? The other snorted. Come on, you don't land lead on your first full pitch just because you can kern well. A pause. I'm just saying, connections don't hurt. Ava didn't turn, didn't breathe. She let the words settle, let the sting crawl under her skin, then walked calmly back to her desk. She didn't slam drawers, she didn't cry. But the joy of that morning had soured. Not ruined, just dented. That evening, as the office emptied and the winter dusk painted long shadows across the walls, Ava stayed behind. She sat at her desk, staring at the first concept sketch that had landed her the pitch. She remembered the pride, the risk, the long nights, and suddenly it all felt tainted, like maybe her best effort would always be viewed as someone else's favor. Her phone buzzed. You did it. Clarence mentioned you're leading the full campaign. I'm proud of you. Ava stared at the message, then typed, do they think it's because of you? A beat. Then, who's they? People. In the office. I heard things today. Nothing direct, just whispers. A pause. Do you think it's because of me? That stopped her. She stared at the blinking cursor, then typed slowly, no, but I hate that I even have to ask myself. Damien's reply came quickly. Then let them whisper. They'll catch up, or they won't, but none of it changes what you've built. The ache of self-doubt didn't disappear, but it dulled because his words weren't protection. They were belief, and right now that was what she needed most. Ava closed the laptop, gathered her things, and left the office not with certainty, but with a steadier kind of strength. Let them whisper. She had stories to tell, and none of them belonged to anyone else. Ava stood in front of the full-length mirror and tried not to panic. She wasn't wearing a gown. She was wearing armor, silk the color of midnight, minimalist neckline open back, a subtle gold chain dipped low at her spine, catching the light like a whisper. She'd borrowed it, Naomi had insisted. It's a gala, not your high school dance. You're walking into a room full of suits and shadows, dress like you belong and then act like you own the place. But Ava didn't feel like she belonged. Not really. Not in a ballroom filled with tech CEOs, venture capitalists, and curated glances. Not on Damien Holt's arm. And yet, here she was. She arrived at the event alone, as agreed. No grand entrance, no attention-drawing fanfare, just a black car, a silent doorman, and her name already on the list. The Holt International Charity Gala was held in the rooftop garden of the Asterium Hotel, a glass cathedral in the clouds, strung with light and luxury. Inside, the air shimmered with expensive perfume and expectation. Ava stepped out of the elevator, her heels clicking softly on polished marble, and immediately felt the shift. Eyes tracked movement, not rudely, but carefully, like people assessing whether you were important or with someone who was. A woman brushed past her, laughing too loudly. A man near the bar was already scanning faces like a radar locked on net worth. Ava kept walking, head up, chin high, own it. Then she saw him. Damien stood by the far wall, a glass of something dark in one hand, the other resting loosely at his side. He wore a tailored black suit with no tie, collar open just enough to make him look both powerful and disarmed. And when he saw her, the noise in the room faded, because his eyes, dark, deliberate, lit with something soft, recognition, admiration, and something almost like relief. She approached slowly. You clean up well, she said, voice steady. He smiled. You redefine understatement. You invited me. I hoped you'd say yes. I almost didn't, she admitted. Why? Because I wasn't sure if I was here as someone you admire or someone you're displaying. He didn't flinch, but his voice lowered. I would never use you like that. I needed to hear it, she said, out loud. Damien inclined his head. Then hear this too. You don't need to earn your space here tonight. You already have it. She exhaled, and something in her chest finally eased. The evening unfolded in layers. Champagne, string quartets, brief speeches, and polite conversations that sounded like negotiations wrapped in praise. Ava drifted between moments. Talked with a woman launching a nonprofit for women in design. Shared a laugh with a startup founder who complimented her shoes. Dodged an overly forward investor with a practiced smile. But her anchor? Damien. He never hovered, never pulled, just stayed close enough to be constant. And when their eyes met across the room, even briefly, it felt like the rest of the space blurred. At one point, they ended up side by side near the balcony, half hidden from the main event. Damien sipped his drink. "You look like you're surviving. I might even be enjoying myself," she said with a grin. "I knew you would." "I didn't," she said honestly, "but I'm glad you did." He turned to face her fully. "Can I say something that might be selfish?" She arched a brow. "Only if I can hold it against you later." "I liked seeing you in my world," he said, "but I liked it even more watching you navigate it like it couldn't touch you." She tilted her head. "That's the trick, isn't it? Let it think it owns you while you quietly own yourself." He smiled. "That's what makes you dangerous." "No," she said, her voice softer now. "That's what makes me free." Their eyes held. No touch, no kiss. But the tension between them stretched thin and golden, like the string of a violin waiting to be played. She turned before it snapped. "I should get back to the table." He didn't stop her, just said, "Thank you for coming," and she replied without hesitation, "Thank you for asking." Later, as the gala wound down and people trickled out into black cars and whispers, Ava stepped into the elevator alone. And as the doors closed, she realized something powerful. She hadn't been pretending tonight. She hadn't been proving herself. She had simply been, and that was more than enough. The first whisper came Monday morning, a half-raised eyebrow from a copy editor she barely knew, the quiet nudge of a colleague's elbow as she passed the espresso machine, a vague, nice-dressed Saturday night from someone who hadn't been there. Ava kept her expression neutral, professional, but inside something curled. She had expected some attention after attending the gala. Holt International's charity event was the kind of thing that turned heads. And she hadn't exactly blended in, not with Damien at her side, not with the way he'd looked at her across the room like she was the only person who mattered. She just hadn't expected it to feel like evidence, like proof of something unspoken, something she hadn't claimed. By mid-morning, the passive commentary turned pointed. Naomi appeared at her desk holding 2 coffees, one for herself, one for Ava. "Drink this," she said flatly, handing Ava the cup. Ava blinked. "What's happening?" Naomi sat on the edge of her desk. "You're a trending topic in the break room." Ava's stomach dipped. "Oh," she managed. Naomi tilted her head. "You okay?" "I don't know," Ava admitted. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, you did something visible." There it was. Not shame, not scandal, just exposure. "I didn't lie about it," Ava said, "but I didn't make an announcement either." "You don't owe them your story," Naomi replied. "But they're building one anyway," Ava murmured. Naomi's voice softened. "Do you care?" Ava looked down at her coffee. Yes and no. She didn't owe anyone an explanation. But the whispers still itched beneath her skin, threatening to unravel the confidence she'd been stitching together, thread by thread. "I care about how it might hurt what I've built here," she said. "I care about not being taken seriously." Naomi nodded. "Then own it, or ignore it, but don't let it shrink you." By lunch, the comments got bolder. She walked past the printer and heard her name. Was that Ava on Holt's arm? Like, our Ava? Guess sleeping your way to the top is back in style. Her chest tightened. She didn't turn, didn't speak, but she heard it. Felt it, every syllable sharp as glass, and suddenly the praise she'd earned felt fragile, like maybe it could be broken, rewritten, erased, by a dress, by a glance, by being seen. She lasted until 4 p.m., then she stepped outside, into the alley beside the building, just for air, just to breathe. Her phone buzzed. She didn't look at it, not yet. She stared up at the sky instead, gray, wide, indifferent, and asked herself the question she'd been circling all day. Would you still be proud of your work if no one believed you earned it? Yes. But damn, it hurt. She finally checked her phone. "You've been quiet today. I take it the storm has found you." She didn't sugarcoat. They're talking, and not kindly. I didn't expect this. Wait. A pause. Visibility is a currency most people resent if they can't control it. They think I'm using you, or that you're using me. And are we? She thought for a long time, then replied, no, but maybe we've both been hiding in the idea that this is just about conversation and curiosity. Do you want to hide? I don't know. I just want to be more than what they assume. His response came slowly, deliberate. Then don't answer the rumor. Redefine the story. Ava pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document, not a pitch, not a campaign, just a single page titled, I am not a rumor. And she wrote, not for anyone else, just for herself, to remember her voice, to reclaim her name, and to begin deciding on her own terms what came next. The invitation arrived Wednesday morning in the form of a forwarded email. Subject panel confirmed, Holt International x Keenan Beck Joint Showcase. We're excited to confirm your speaking slot, Ava. As requested by Mr. Holt's office, the two of you will be co-presenting the final design showcase for the Collaborative Sustainability Campaign. Press will be attending. Briefing call to follow. Ava read the message 3 times, then again, then closed her laptop and just sat, co-presenting with Damien on stage in front of a room full of clients, executives, and press. She hadn't even known there was a joint campaign, let alone that she had been assigned to represent Keenan Beck, or that Damien had personally requested her. The breath left her lungs in one slow, stunned exhale. This wasn't subtle. It wasn't shadowed. This was a choice, a public one. And it meant something. Too much, maybe. Naomi appeared at her desk half an hour later, waving the same email on her phone. Should I be flattered or furious? Ava blinked. What? You're jumping a whole rung. Co-presenting with Holt, that's CEO-level territory. Clarence didn't even blink, just forwarded the invite and told me to back you. Ava sat back in her chair. I didn't ask for this. No, Naomi said, quieter now. But he did, which means he's either making a point or making a stand. Ava's chest tightened. I don't want to be a message, she murmured. I want to be a maker. Naomi crouched beside her, voice calm. Then show up, speak with the voice you've earned. If this is a test, you're already the answer. By Friday morning, the buzz was everywhere. Keenan Beck and Holt International co-presenting was headline-worthy enough. But Ava Sinclair co-presenting? That was a story. The press desk requested bios. Marketing asked for a headshot. Someone from HR asked if she needed media coaching. She declined. If she was going to do this, it would be on her terms. No polish, no performance, just presence. The event was held at an upscale creative arts center. Exposed wood beams, modular lighting, a long runway-style stage with minimalist stools for speakers. Ava arrived early, dressed in sleek black slacks and a structured cream blouse. Clean, simple, confident. She waited backstage, reviewing her cue cards, grounding her breath. Then she heard his voice. Ava. She turned. Damien stood in the doorway. No entourage, no assistant, just him. He looked at her the way he always did, like she was the most intentional thing in the room. I didn't know about this until the email, she said. I asked them to include you, he said quietly, because you deserve to be here. You could have told me. I didn't want you to think it was charity. Her eyes searched his. Was it? No, he said. It was respect. Ava nodded once, then stepped toward him. If we do this, she said, we do it with clarity. No games, no hiding. No hiding, he repeated, and he meant it. The presentation began with Damien's introduction, concise, powerful, elegant. Then he turned to her and said clearly, the vision of this campaign was born from collaboration, but the soul of it came from the designer you're about to meet. Please welcome Ava Sinclair. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous, but it was real. And as Ava stepped into the light, she didn't flinch. She spoke with calm. She presented with grace. She let her work speak. And when she closed with, design isn't just what we show, it's what we stand beside, her eyes flicked briefly to Damien. He nodded, subtle and proud. They exited the stage together to a room buzzing with interest. Backstage, he turned to her. You held that room, he said, and you didn't need me to do it. No, she said, voice steady, but I'm glad you were there. Their eyes locked. Something silent passed between them. Then Ava added, thank you for standing beside me. Damien's voice was lower now. It wasn't a gesture. It was a declaration, a pause, a decision. And Ava, She didn't walk away, didn't change the subject. She stood in it, fully, completely. Seen. The city had a way of exhaling after 10 p.m., like it, too, had been pretending all day. Ava walked alongside Damien on a quiet stretch of pavement 2 blocks from the event center. The air was cool, the noise distant, the evening wrapped in that electric hush that only happens when something almost happens. They'd left the post-event dinner early. Not in a rush. Just in sync. Too full of energy to sit through another round of business small talk, too connected to share each other with the room. They hadn't said it out loud, but they'd both known. The streetlights flickered gold across Ava's shoulders as she hugged her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the stir of adrenaline still spinning beneath her skin. "I should be exhausted," she murmured. "But you're not," Damien said. "No." She smiled. "I'm wired, but in a good way. Like I'm finally stepping into the room I built for myself." "You didn't just step into it," he said. "You filled it." She looked at him then. Really looked. No crowd. No stage, no curated moment, just a man beside her who had once been a stranger in a car and was now something else entirely. They reached the corner of the street where a car waited for him. Quiet, expensive, understated. He didn't gesture for her to get in. He didn't offer to drive her home. He just stood with her on the sidewalk like he wasn't quite ready to let the night end. "You're different when you're not performing," she said. "I wasn't performing tonight." "Weren't you?" He tilted his head. "Only for you." Ava laughed, soft, tired, genuine. "You're impossible. Only when I want something I'm not supposed to want." The words landed between them like a match gently striking stone. She didn't move, neither did he. But the air shifted. His eyes flicked to her mouth, hers to his. It would have been easy, too easy. One step closer, one breath shallower, one slip, and they'd be kissing, but they didn't. Because the moment asked something else. Asked for patience. For intention, for the kind of care people rarely give desire. He reached up instead and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so gentle it felt like a sentence whispered through touch. "I don't want this to be something we regret," he said. "Then don't rush it," she whispered. His hand dropped, the heat between them dimmed but didn't vanish. A promise made in pause, not pursuit. She stepped back. "Good night, Damien." He inclined his head, voice low. "Good night, Ava." She turned, walked away, felt his eyes on her until the corner swallowed her into its quiet, and smiled. The late morning sunlight spilled across Ava's kitchen counter as she stood barefoot in leggings and an oversized hoodie, hands wrapped around a chipped mug of coffee she'd reheated twice. She'd been staring at her phone for 10 minutes. Not texting, not scrolling, just thinking. About his hand brushing her hair back. About the way he'd looked at her like she was something he could touch, but chose not to. And how that restraint had shaken her more than any kiss ever had. Because it hadn't been rejection. It had been respect. And that was so much harder to resist. She sipped her coffee, closed her eyes, and let the moment play again in her mind. Not the almost kiss. The silence that followed. The way it had lingered. A knock on her apartment door broke the loop. Raya, naturally. She stepped in without waiting, sunglasses already sliding off her head, hair wind-tousled and face full of intention. "I brought muffins," she announced, "and emotional clarity. You get to pick which one you actually need." Ava blinked. What?" Raya dropped the bag on the counter, popped the lid on Ava's coffee, and poured the rest into the sink. "Sit." Ava obeyed, half out of confusion, half out of love. Raya pulled up a chair and folded her arms. "Talk." "About what?" Raya arched an eyebrow. "About the man who looked at you at that gala like he'd never seen anyone braver. About the fact that the entire creative team now refers to you as the one with the CEO's eyes on her. About the fact that you clearly had a moment with him, and now you're hiding in caffeine and denial." Ava stared. "Is that what this is? An intervention?" "It's a muffin-fueled reality check," Raya replied. "Now spill." Ava hesitated. Then, quietly, she did. She told Raya everything. About the gala, the co-presentation, the walk afterward, the moment that nearly became something more, and didn't, and why that scared her even more than if it had. When she finished, Raya sat still for a beat. Then she leaned in. "So, you're in love with him?" Ava didn't answer. Not at first, because saying it meant owning it. Not just to Raya, but to herself. She looked down at her hands, then said softly, I think I'm becoming in love with him. Slowly. Like the kind of feeling that doesn't explode but settles into your bones. Raya's voice gentled. Does he know? Ava met her eyes. Not yet. Do you want him to? A long pause, then a nod. Yes. Raya let out a breath, then stopped treating this like it's something that needs permission. I'm scared, Ava admitted. Not of him, of what I become when someone sees me that clearly. What if I lose myself again? You won't, Raya said, because this time you're not being consumed. You're being chosen, and you're choosing back. That landed right in the center of her chest. Ava smiled, small but certain, then said, I think I'm ready to stop waiting. Raya leaned back with a smug grin. Well, thank God. I was getting tired of being the romantic lead by default. Ava laughed, louder than she meant to, and for the first time in days, the fear didn't feel like a weight. It felt like momentum. That evening, Ava opened her phone. No drafted message this time. No doubt, just intention. Hi. Are you free tomorrow? I'd like to talk. The reply came 2 minutes later. Yes, tell me where. I'll be there. Ava chose the bench by the pond in Bryant Park, early Sunday morning. Not quite warm, but just shy of cold. The city was quieter here, birds louder than car horns, sunlight cutting through branches like it had earned its place. It wasn't a dramatic setting, it wasn't romantic, but it felt real. Honest. Damien arrived just before 9 a.m., dressed simply, navy coat, scarf loosened, hands in pockets. When he saw her, he didn't smile immediately. He just let out a breath and sat beside her like it was the only place he wanted to be. Thanks for meeting me, Ava said softly. I've been hoping you would ask. They sat in silence for a beat. Then Ava turned slightly toward him. I've been trying to figure out what this is. What we are, she began. But I realized the truth isn't in what we've said. It's in what we haven't. Damien nodded once, slowly. I haven't said much, he admitted, because I didn't want to break what wasn't broken yet. But not naming something doesn't protect it, she said. It just hides it from the people who need to see it most. He looked at her then, really looked. No walls, no guarded calm, just him. You matter to me, Ava, he said. More than I expected, more than I planned. Her breath caught. I've built an entire life around control, around not letting anyone too close, because loss taught me that love isn't safe. It undoes you. Quietly at first, then all at once. I know, she whispered. It terrified me too. He reached for her hand then, not suddenly, not dramatically, just an open palm resting beside hers. She placed her fingers into his without a word, and when she did, his thumb curled around hers like he'd been waiting for permission he never thought he'd be granted. I'm not asking you for forever, she said. I'm not asking for guarantees. I just want to stop pretending I don't want this. You, us. His jaw flexed, something behind his eyes flickered. You already have me, he said. A pause, and it's not conditional. Tears pricked behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. Good, because I'm not offering conditions either. They sat like that, hands clasped, still facing forward, two people who'd held back everything and now had nothing left to hide. Not lust, not fear, not love, just truth. Damien looked down at their hands, then back at her. Ava, he said, voice low, can I kiss you now? She smiled and answered, yes, please. He leaned in, no rush, no hunger, just reverence. His lips met hers like a promise that had waited long enough. Soft, certain, earned. When they pulled back, the world hadn't changed, but they had, because sometimes love doesn't announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly and stays. It started with a headline. Ava was still in bed, the morning sun a faint glow behind the curtains when her phone buzzed. Too early for Naomi, too late for spam. She checked the screen. Brace yourself, you're on page 6. Ava blinked, heart stalling, clicked the link. CEO Damien Holt's new muse? Mystery designer finally revealed. Insiders confirm that Ava Sinclair, the rising creative force behind Keenan Beck's latest campaigns, has been quietly linked to billionaire Damien Holt for weeks. The pair appeared side by side at a high-profile gala and again at last week's Design Summit, where Holt allegedly requested Sinclair as a co-presenter. Sources suggest the connection goes beyond creative synergy. Ava dropped her phone like it had burned her, then picked it up again. Reread the article. Every line was laced with innuendo. her job title couched in quotation marks, her achievements framed as footnotes to her association with him. A rising creative? No. A muse, not a maker. A mirror. She sat up slowly, pulse pounding in her ears. It didn't matter that the work had been hers. It didn't matter that she'd said no to shortcuts, no to favors, no to power plays. The world saw what it wanted. And right now, it saw his name before hers. Her phone buzzed again. She answered on the second ring. I saw it, he said quietly. I figured. I didn't leak it. I know. Silence. Then he asked, Are you okay? No, Ava admitted. But I will be. He hesitated. Then, this is what I was afraid of. Not you. Not us. This. I know, she said, and you still chose me. I did. She let that sit for a moment. I just don't know what happens now, she whispered. I do, he replied. We don't hide. We don't explain. We just keep building what we're building. And we don't let people who haven't earned the right to define us own the narrative. Ava swallowed hard. But what if I lose the work, the credibility? Then they were never giving it to you honestly in the first place. His voice wasn't sharp. It was anchored, like he had seen storms before and had no intention of letting her face this one alone. Naomi cornered her the moment she walked into Keenan Beck. Office. Now. Ava followed her in. Door closed, laptop open. The article was already on screen. Naomi looked at her for a long moment. You okay? Ava hesitated. I think so. Naomi nodded. Here's the deal. You're not getting fired. Clarence already shut that down, but there are whispers. Some clients are side-eyeing the presentation now. The team split. Half are defending you. Half are wondering if the article just confirmed their assumptions. Ava felt her throat tighten. Naomi leaned in. So here's what I need from you, Ava. Anything. Don't apologize. Ava blinked. What? Don't walk into rooms smaller because people can't handle your size, Naomi said. You did the work. You led the campaigns. You earned the seat. Don't let a headline undo your own belief in that. Ava exhaled, shaky but steady. I won't, she said. Naomi nodded once. Good, because if anyone comes for you, they'll have to go through me first. Ava almost laughed, almost cried. Instead, she just whispered, Thank you. That night, she found herself in Damien's apartment for the first time. It wasn't what she expected. No marble floors or grand staircases, just books, art, music. A kitchen that looked like it had been used recently. He poured her tea instead of wine, let her curl up on the sofa with a blanket and a stare that said he'd waited longer than he admitted for this moment. I didn't want this, she said softly. Not like this, not through gossip. I know, but I still want us. He met her eyes and said simply, Then nothing else matters. And for the first time since the headline broke, she believed that. The offer came in a manila envelope, no ceremony, just Naomi setting it gently on Ava's desk before their 9 a.m. meeting. Inside, a formal promotion letter, new title, Senior Creative Lead, an invite to the partner track, and a clause, a single line tucked in near the bottom. Due to recent public attention, personal affiliations with external executives, especially those in overlapping industries, are to remain confidential while in leadership roles. Ava stared at the line. Read it again and again. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a condition. You can rise, but not with him in the picture. She sat frozen in her chair, the weight of her ambition pressing against the raw edge of her heart. This was the seat she'd fought for, the one she'd bled to earn, and now it came with strings, disguised as structure. Naomi knocked once on the glass wall and slipped inside. You saw it? Ava didn't look up. I saw it. Naomi sighed, folding her arms. I fought for that title, Ava. You deserve it. Everyone knows it. But legal added that clause without warning. Clarence hasn't said anything yet, but it's political. Investors. Optics. Ava's voice was quiet. They want me to disappear him. No, just compartmentalize him. Ava looked up. That's the same thing. Naomi didn't argue because she knew Ava was right. That night, Ava walked the city. No headphones, no distractions. Just streets and sky and too many questions pressing against her chest like thunder. She reached for her phone 3 times. Each time, she stopped. Because this wasn't Damien's decision. It was hers. The version of herself who had nothing would have taken the promotion in a heartbeat. The version of herself who had clawed her way into creative rooms and earned the respect of people who didn't hand it out lightly. She wasn't sure anymore. She stopped at a coffee shop and sat near the window, watching her reflection tremble in the glass. What did she want? Clarity. courage, and something true. She pulled out her phone, typed, "They offered me senior lead, but they want me to keep us quiet. Not officially, but enough to make me feel like I should be ashamed." Damien replied faster than she expected. "Do you want the job?" "Yes." "Then take it. Even if it means stepping backward, even if it means pretending you're not you." A longer pause this time. "Then, not if it means losing who you are. That version of you, the one who hides love for the sake of comfort, that's not the woman I believe in." She read it twice. Her heart cracked open, not because he was asking her to choose him, but because he wasn't. He was asking her to choose herself. The next morning, Ava walked into Clarence's office, folder in hand, back straight, and said without hesitation, "I'm grateful for the offer, but I won't lead from a place that asks me to shrink." Clarence looked up, blinking. Naomi, standing near the window, gave a near-invisible smile. Ava placed the folder on the desk. "I want the work. I love the work, but I won't sign a future that makes me small." She turned, left, didn't slam the door, didn't cry, because she wasn't losing. She was choosing. Ava didn't regret saying no to the promotion. She regretted what it meant. Not because she wanted to be in the spotlight for the sake of attention, but because she had earned that seat. With her voice, with her vision, with every sleepless night spent sketching her way out of anonymity. But more than anything, she regretted that they, the agency, the investors, the ones who whispered, had made her feel like her brilliance was conditional, that it couldn't coexist with love, that she had to choose between being someone's partner and being someone's creative lead. She refused. And the price of that refusal was loneliness. For now. She hadn't seen Damien in 3 days. Not because they were avoiding each other, but because everything that needed to be said had already been laid bare. And sometimes space isn't silence, it's respect. She spent those days doing the work anyway, finalizing deliverables, cleaning up loose campaigns, mentoring junior designers who still asked her questions like nothing had changed. Because in a way, nothing had. She was still her. Still the woman who had walked into Keenan Beck with nothing but a tablet and the hope that her voice could matter. She sat in the creative lounge one night with Jules and Naomi, drinking warm tea from paper cups and watching the city blur through the windows. "So, what now?" Jules asked. Ava smiled faintly. "I keep building, with or without titles." Naomi passed her a cookie. "You already did what most people never find the guts to do. You said no to something shiny because it didn't shine the right way." "I just didn't want to betray the version of me I worked so hard to find," Ava said. Naomi nodded. "That's the woman who should be leading. Don't worry, your seat's not gone. The room just hasn't caught up to you yet." Damien didn't text her that week. He didn't call. But Ava felt that he was holding space. And when the invitation came, it wasn't grand, it wasn't sweeping, it was simple. "Tomorrow. Rooftop, 7 p.m., just us. No boardrooms, no articles. I want to show you something." Ava stared at the message, then typed, "I'll be there." The next evening, she arrived at the address he sent, an old brownstone in the village, unassuming from the street. Inside, a narrow staircase wound up to a rooftop garden she hadn't known existed. There were string lights overhead, warm against the darkening sky, and at the edge of the rooftop, easels, 5 of them, blank canvases, and Damien waiting beside them with a brush in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. "I thought we could make something together," he said. She smiled. "Is this where you confess you've been a secret painter all along?" He chuckled. "Not even close. But I remembered you once said you design like you're painting with emotion. I wanted to feel what that's like." Ava stepped forward, took the brush from his hand, and gently dipped it into the dark blue paint he'd prepared. Then she leaned in and kissed him. Not tentative, not cautious, but deliberate. Because she was done waiting for permission to want what had already been hers. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said, voice low. "I've loved you since the moment you said no to comfort and yes to truth." Ava's breath hitched, then steadied. "I love you too," she whispered. "Not because you stood beside me, but because you never asked me to stand behind you." They kissed again, deeper this time, and then they painted. Not with perfection, but with joy. with color, with the kind of freedom that only comes from being seen. Later, as they lay under the stars, fingers interlaced, Ava whispered, "What are we, Damien?" He turned his head toward her. "Exactly what we've chosen to be," he said. "Not defined by the world, not reduced by the past, just us." She smiled and knew she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "Hi, Naomi. We've reviewed your team's previous campaigns, and we're especially impressed by the narrative tone, color work, and visual warmth in the Brood Legacy pitch. Is Ava Sinclair available to lead our concept development directly? We're a small team and prefer hands-on creatives. Budget is flexible. Ownership matters. Let me know." Caroline Reed, co-founder. North and Reed Interiors. Naomi had stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before breaking into a grin. She forwarded it with one line. "They asked for you, by name. No title needed." Ava read the email 3 times, then sat back in her chair and let it sink in. They hadn't chosen her because she had a leadership role. They chose her because her work spoke, because her voice reached someone, because the stories she told with color, with breath, with space, moved them, and no one had to co-sign it. Not Damien, not Clarence, just her. Naomi pulled Ava aside later that afternoon. "I'll support you however you want to play this," she said. "We can contract the job through the agency, or I can step back and help you freelance it direct. Up to you." Ava looked at her, really looked, and said, "You know what I want." Naomi smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd say." The next 2 weeks moved fast. Caroline Reed was sharp, artistic, and refreshingly unfiltered. "We're not looking for sleek," she'd said during their first virtual call. "We're looking for soul." Ava built the campaign like she was writing a letter. Warm tones, touchable textures, typography that hummed with memory. She sent the deck. Caroline replied in under 10 minutes. "You captured us. Exactly. Let's go." And just like that, Ava was back. Not under someone, not behind someone, not apologizing for being aligned with a man who loved her, just doing the work and letting it speak louder than the whispers ever had. The day the contract finalized, Ava met Damien in the same cafe where they'd first shared coffee, before things had names, before their hands ever touched. He was already waiting at their table, reading something on his phone. When he saw her, he stood. Always. She sat, pulled out her phone, and slid it across the table. "Signed, with my name on the invoice." He read it, then looked up. Pride written all over him. "No title," she said. "No agency backing, just me. And that's exactly why they came to you." She leaned forward, arms folded on the table, eyes warm. "You were right. The story doesn't need to be rewritten. It just needed to be told honestly." They sat like that for a while, quiet, steady, comfortable in the truth. That night, Ava got home and sat with her sketch pad, the city soft outside her window, the future somehow closer now. She didn't feel like she was waiting anymore. Not for approval, not for power, not for someone to choose her. She'd chosen herself. And everything else, love, work, freedom, was growing from that place. The invitation came in an ivory envelope, hand-delivered to Keenan Beck's front desk. Ava wasn't expecting it. No one was. Inside was a single card, clean design, deep plum ink. "Women in Design, Redefining Creative Leadership." Ava Sinclair, confirmed speaker. Panel topic, Visibility, Integrity, and the Cost of a Voice. Co-panelists, Lena Grayson, Rachel Ningo, Pilar Tessier. Date March 8th, location the Glasswell, Midtown. Ava read it once. Then again, Lena's name stared back at her like a challenge wrapped in a compliment. Naomi leaned over her shoulder, eyebrows climbing. "Well, that's a lineup." Ava swallowed. "Did you know?" "No," Naomi said, "but I do know this. They wouldn't invite you unless the room already wanted to hear you." Ava nodded slowly. Still, a hum of nerves settled under her skin. Because Lena Grayson wasn't just a name. She was a symbol, a mirror. Everything Ava had once feared she could never be. Poised, protected, impenetrable. And Damien's ex, of course. That part still clung like static at the edge of every headline. From Holt's muse to her own name, designing past the shadow. Even now, Ava's rise still echoed in rooms she hadn't entered. Now, she was being handed the mic. The question was, would she use it? The panel was held in a vaulted gallery at the Glasswell, all clean light and curved glass, rows of cream chairs, gold risers, soft music that didn't settle anyone's nerves, least of all Ava's. She arrived early, always, checked her notes, straightened her blouse, pinned her name badge just below her collarbone. She wasn't hiding, not tonight. The The panel began with introductions. Rachel, sharp and sweet. Pilar, dry and brilliant. Lena, last to speak, her words as smooth as ever. And then Ava. She stood, voice steady. I'm Ava Sinclair. I design with memory. I believe in color as emotion. I've led campaigns that sold ideas, not just products. And I've learned sometimes the most radical thing a woman can do in a boardroom is stay visible. There was a beat of quiet, then applause, small but real. The moderator launched into questions. Midway through it happened, a sharp question from the audience, directed squarely at her. How do you respond to the narrative that your recent visibility is more about your relationship than your skill? It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind. A ripple of tension moved through the room. Ava could feel Lena's gaze, waiting, testing. But Ava didn't flinch. She lifted the mic and said, I respond by continuing to show up, not to prove I deserve the space, but to remind others they do too. I don't owe anyone a breakdown of my personal life to validate my professional one. What I create speaks for itself. And if people can't hear it over the sound of my relationship status, that's not my failure. Silence, then applause, louder this time, and a nod from Lena Grayson herself. Small, but unmistakable. After the panel, as the room began to thin, Lena approached her. Ava didn't move. She wasn't intimidated anymore. Lena extended a hand. I underestimated you, she said. Ava took it, firm. Most people do once. Lena smiled tightly but not cruelly, then turned and walked away. Ava exhaled, and just like that, the fear was gone. That night, Damien texted. She said, you were the most grounded voice on the stage. I already knew that, but I'm glad she does too. I didn't go there to win. I went to stand, and I did. The cabin was 2 hours outside the city. No signal. No press. No pressure. Just pine trees, a small lake, and the soft hush of wind across water. Damien drove. Ava sat in the passenger seat, head leaned back, legs tucked beneath her, watching the world get quieter the farther they drove from it. This feels a little like running away, she said softly. He glanced over, smiling. It's not running away. It's retreating with intention. She laughed. You even make rest sound strategic. Guilty. The car wound through the final stretch of woods before turning down a gravel path, ending in front of a weathered cedar-sided house with wide windows and a porch that looked like it had heard 1,000 secrets. This place is beautiful, Ava said. My brother and I came here every summer as kids, Damien replied. After he passed, I didn't come back for years. And now? I wanted to bring you here. Ava blinked. She reached for his hand as they stepped out of the car, fingers interlacing in a way that no longer needed thought. This weekend wasn't about declarations. It was about presence. They cooked dinner together, pasta and fresh bread, Damien chopping vegetables with surprising precision while Ava danced around the kitchen, music low and laughter easy. No mentions of work, no questions about campaigns or clients, just stories of childhood, of first heartbreaks, of mistakes neither of them had ever admitted out loud. When Ava burned the garlic, they opened the windows. When Damien dropped the salt, they laughed until they were breathless. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. After dinner, they sat on the porch, barefoot, sharing a blanket and a bottle of wine, the stars above them clearer than they'd seen in years. You feel different here, she said. I feel more here, he replied. She turned her face to his. You always carry so much, she said softly. So do you. But I'm learning to put it down. So am I. He kissed her then. Not tentative, not fragile, but slow, rooted. The kind of kiss that says we're not just surviving anymore. When they broke apart, their foreheads touched. You don't have to prove anything to me, he whispered. I know, she said, but I've spent so long trying to prove something to myself. And I think I've finally done it. They spent the next day walking the trails, stopping to sketch wildflowers, dipping their feet in the lake. Damien cooked breakfast badly, and Ava teased him for hours. There was no agenda, no clock, just them. By the second night, as they lay tangled under a quilt in the quiet hush of the cabin, Ava whispered into his shoulder, "This feels like home." Damien didn't answer with words. He just held her closer. The morning they left, Ava wrote something in her sketch pad and tore the page out before folding it into his coat pocket. He didn't find it until she was asleep in the car on the ride home. It read, "You don't have to be strong with me. You just have to be here." He looked over at her, cheek pressed to the window, breath soft, completely still, and new. He wasn't afraid anymore. The offer wasn't written on letterhead, it came in a conversation, over coffee, from someone Ava admired. Caroline Reed, client turned mentor, founder of North and Reed Interiors, had invited Ava to her design office under the casual pretense of catching up. The coffee was strong, the room was quiet, and then Caroline said, "I'm expanding, but I don't want another branch. I want something new, a sister brand, small, focused, story-driven, led by someone who doesn't think like the rest of us." Ava blinked. Caroline smiled. "I want you, Ava, not your resume, not your affiliations, you'd name it. Build the team, shape the voice. I'll fund the foundation, but it's yours." Ava's breath caught. She'd dreamed of this. Not loudly, not publicly. But late at night, in silence, she'd drawn logos for studios that didn't exist yet, written manifestos no one had read, imagined walls that hummed with art and intention. Her own space, her own name. She stared at the offer, simple, direct, generous, then said almost too quietly, "Why me?" Caroline smiled, "Because you already lead like it's yours. You just haven't been given the keys." She told Damien that evening, not in a big moment, just the two of them, cooking in his kitchen, her hands flour-dusted, his sleeves rolled. "I was offered my own studio," she said softly. He paused, met her eyes, waited. "I didn't say yes," she added quickly. "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first." He dried his hands, crossed to her. "You wanted my permission?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Your partnership. I know how much space something like this takes. Time. Focus. I want it, Damien, but I want to be honest about what it will cost." He studied her, quiet, steady, then said, "Do you know what I saw the first time I really looked at you?" She shook her head. "I saw someone already building something important, with nothing but vision and stubborn hope. You weren't waiting to be chosen. You were choosing yourself." He stepped closer. "You don't have to ask me how to carry this. You were born to." Ava's eyes stung. "I don't want it to push you away." He smiled, soft, sure. "It brings me closer." She pressed her forehead to his chest and whispered, "Then I'm saying yes." That weekend, Ava sat on her apartment floor and pulled out every notebook, sketchpad, and idea she'd ever buried. Names, color palettes, creative philosophies. Her manifesto began with one line, "We design what we believe. We brand what we become." She called it Hollow and Home, because she'd once felt hollow, and now she was home. Naomi was the first to hear the pitch. "You're really doing this?" she asked, eyes wide. Ava smiled. "Yes, I'm building the room I've been asking permission to enter." Naomi stood, hugged her, then whispered, "About time." Damien surprised her the night before launch. He handed her a flat envelope. Inside, a letter, typed, but signed in ink. "To the woman who taught me that power doesn't always look like command, sometimes it looks like care. May your studio be as brave as your silence once was, and may your name echo in places even your fear used to live." Ava didn't cry, but she came close. The studio smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Sunlight poured through tall windows, spilling across hardwood floors that still echoed when she walked barefoot from room to room. There were no signs yet. No logo on the glass, just one small brass plate at the entrance, subtle and polished. Hollow and Home. Her name was below it. Ava Sinclair, founder and creative director. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in her life, it belonged to her. The morning moved gently. The team was arriving soon. 4 people she'd handpicked not because they had perfect portfolios, but because they saw things. Naomi was helping with onboarding. Jules was joining part-time. Caroline had sent flowers with a note that simply read, "Make noise." Ava stood in the center of the open room and looked around. There was no corner office, no hierarchy, just desks, light. Music humming low from a speaker tucked between bookcases, and her heartbeat. Steady, clear, unapologetic. At 10 a.m., the door opened, not the front one, the back. Damien stepped inside quietly, 2 coffees in hand, dressed in black and navy like he hadn't even tried and still looked devastatingly good. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her, then at the walls, then back to her. "This place," he began, "feels like you." She smiled. "That's the point." He crossed the room, set 1 coffee on the nearest desk, and cupped her face with a softness that still startled her. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," she whispered. He kissed her forehead, slow and warm, then asked, "You ready?" Ava turned toward the front windows. The world was still spinning outside, but inside this room it had begun. She nodded, more than ever. By noon, the small space was alive with voices, laughter, laptops, design tools, and vision boards. People moved with purpose. Ava moved between them like she'd always belonged, not as a boss, but as a beacon, someone who had walked through fire and learned to light her own way. At 3:17 p.m., a reporter stopped by. Not press, not gossip, just a woman writing a piece about women-led studios. "Do you mind if I ask you something off record?" she asked as Ava poured them both tea. "Sure," Ava replied. "What made you decide to lead instead of follow?" Ava paused, then said simply, "I stopped waiting to be chosen." That night, Damien stayed to help clean up. The last light turned off, the last mug rinsed. He pulled her close by the door and said, "So, what happens now?" Ava wrapped her arms around his neck and said, "Now we live the life we built, side by side." He kissed her, not because it was a grand moment, but because it was the right one.